During the riots, we did use the D.C. Guard to quell disturbance near the Capitol and near the White House, and to protect the U.S. monuments, which who would believe they could come under attack? But our founders turned out to be bad guys, apparently. And I went to meet with them and find out how it went. I mean, they got the hell beat out of them many nights, right? Frozen water bottles and stuff like that, and they did a great job. As the election approached, we knew they run the inauguration. The Army runs the inauguration, so I went over to check in on General Walker and see if he had what he needed. We thought there might be some disturbances around the election. How are we prepped for that? And I had a lot of confidence in those guys. They were very professional. I think that group was probably 70% African-American soldiers, because they're from D.C., and it tends to be the demographic in that community. And they love their country. And so I was like, these guys are good. January 6th rolls around, and they're on the front line, supposedly. That's what they're for. Now en route to January 6th, unfortunately, I lost confidence in senior Army leadership, the uniform part. These guys revealed themselves to be very partisan and very aligned with Democratic politics.
So this problem that led to the West Point Manifesto,
right?
Was this systemic already from the top? Where did this come from, the bottom up into West Point, or did this come from the top down?
I think it came from three directions: top, middle, and bottom.
Really?
Yep. Our academies, in my view, have become they're trade schools, and the trade is defend your country, fundamentally.
Right.
They've done a wonderful job these many years, but they civilianized a piece of the faculty, and that was an initiative from Congress under, I think, Senator Nunn back when he was over there. Well, they bring a culture, because up to that point it was mostly military faculty of Army captains, majors, lieutenant colonels, and colonels, led by a three-star general. And it was, you're going to be in the Army, here's the Constitution, here's our country, why we're different, very good stuff. Well, into the English department came a character who brought critical race theory.
Okay.
At the head of the history department was a fellow who ended up being in charge of renaming all the Army bases that were objectionable. Right. Over in the behavioral sciences department was another little clique of people who thought we needed to reinvent sort of what America and the academy were about. And they had been allowed to have a minors program. So problem one is, it's a trade school. This is where our most numerate Army officers tend to come from in mass. We're going to graduate, close to 1,000 a year, and it's an engineering school, it's a Bachelor of Science degree, and you're going to get a Bachelor of Science degree in equity and inclusion. Right? It's nonsense. And this culture began to grow up there. And when I looked at these cadets who wrote this memo, many of them were in that minors program. And then you're looking, okay, well, who's the adults, who's the mentors, where's this coming from? And they were indoctrinating these kids. It wasn't General Milley's contention about white rage, and I read Marx to understand, my enemy, Karl Marx, and communism. Right. It wasn't an academic exercise. It was indoctrination. That's the only way it could come out.
But this isn't happening just at the academies, though. This is happening at those bases that have been renamed, just to name a few. We just did a story a few weeks ago here at Blaze News about this soldier who had snapped a photo he was a MP, so it was an MP training. And so what the slide on the PowerPoint presentation was of a potential bumper sticker that you might see on somebody's car that was pro-life, and it clearly defined them as domestic terrorists. Right. So one of the soldiers snapped a photo, and this was at Fort Liberty, which of course used to be Fort Bragg. He snapped a photo, he sent it to somebody who put it online, and then within a couple of hours, because I know how to do this, I had that soldier on the phone with me, and he was explaining to me exactly what happened. Now, the first thing that Fort Liberty did through their public affairs office was to claim that this was an anomaly, that a private contractor had slipped through and dropped this slide. Well, immediately the blogosphere blew up, and we found out that this was systemic, that was happening at bases all over the country.
Right.
So where's that coming from?
It comes from a culture. And if the culture begins to entertain this and tolerate it, it takes hold. My public affairs officer came in my office one day during the riots, and somehow or other I was supposed to sign off on a statement from my portfolio critiquing police forces around the United States for the unequal treatment of one group versus another. And I'm like, thank God I read most of the stuff that came in my office, because there was a lot of stuff. And I just looked at her. She was a good officer. And I'm like, you think anybody's waiting for the United States Army to pass judgment on police forces? We don't get involved in these things, to A. And B, have you gone and looked at the FBI, statistics on crime in this country?
Right.
I said, don't bring this in my office again. We're not doing this kind of thing. But it comes out of nowhere when people watch what's going on TV. They watch the behavior of people at the top of the Army. They think they've got license, right? And license was given informally through behavior.
So, speaking of the top of the Army,